My name is Dr. Adrienne Parker, and I am 39 years old. 5 nights ago, my husband demanded I strip naked as entertainment for his medical school reunion friends at our waterfront estate. He believed 10 years of psychological control had broken me entirely. He was lethally wrong. When I removed my cashmere coat, I revealed court documents transferring our medical practice, waterfront properties, and investment portfolio exclusively to my name. His physician friends watched him realize a cardiac surgeon had systematically cut him out of everything. Before I tell you how I spent 16 months building a flawless legal strategy while he played golf, drop a comment telling me what part of the world you are watching from right now. Smash that like button and subscribe immediately, because this is the story of what happens when you underestimate someone who operates on human hearts for a living. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in a family of medical professionals. My father was a cardiothoracic surgeon at Medical University of South Carolina. My mother was a pediatric oncologist at the same hospital. Medicine was not just their profession, it was our family identity and the framework through which we understood service precision and saving lives. Dinner conversations involved surgical techniques and treatment protocols as naturally as other families discussed sports or politics. I knew from childhood I would become a surgeon. I was fascinated watching my father's hands work with microscopic precision, understanding that millimeter differences determined whether patients lived or died. I studied relentlessly through high school, determined to follow my parents into medicine. I attended Duke University for undergraduate studies, majoring in biochemistry with a perfect 4.0 grade point average. Medical school was at Johns Hopkins, one of the most prestigious programs in the country. I thrived in the demanding environment. The long hours and intense pressure that broke other students energized me. I was made for this. I matched into cardiothoracic surgery residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most competitive surgical specialties at one of the best hospitals in the world. Surgical residency was brutal. 100-hour weeks were normal. I essentially lived at the hospital for 5 years, but I was becoming an exceptional surgeon. My attendings praised my technical skills and decision-making under pressure. By the time I finished residency and fellowship, I had trained at the highest level and was ready to practice independently. I accepted a position at Seattle's premier cardiac surgery practice when I was 32. The practice had an excellent reputation and served as the primary cardiac surgery group for multiple hospitals throughout the Seattle area. I was the youngest surgeon in the practice and the only woman. I worked incredibly hard to prove myself, taking the most difficult cases and working longer hours than necessary. I met my husband Eric at a hospital fundraising gala 2 years after moving to Seattle. He was an orthopedic surgeon at a different hospital, charismatic and confident in the way successful surgeons often are. After the event, he approached me and asked intelligent questions about cardiac surgery. He seemed impressed that I had trained at Mass General and worked at such a prestigious practice. Eric pursued me persistently over the following months. Dinner invitations, flowers sent to the hospital texts between my surgical cases. He was romantic and attentive in ways I found flattering after years focused entirely on training. He came from a wealthy Seattle family. His father owned commercial real estate throughout the Pacific Northwest. His mother sat on multiple nonprofit boards. Eric had grown up with significant privilege and social connections. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. The proposal was public and elaborate at a charity medical gala in front of hundreds of Seattle's medical and social elite. I felt pressured to say yes, with everyone watching and applauding expectantly. I loved Eric, or believed I did, and declining publicly would have been humiliating for both of us. So I agreed, and we began planning an extravagant wedding. The wedding took place at a waterfront estate venue paid for primarily by Eric's family, who insisted on making it a showcase social event. 600 guests attended, mostly his family's social connections and his medical school friends. My family's surgical colleagues and friends were a clear minority. The wedding was beautiful and expensive, but felt more like displaying Eric's family's wealth and status than celebrating our relationship. After the wedding, Eric began suggesting I should reduce my surgical schedule. He said I was working too hard, and the stress was aging me prematurely. He said his orthopedic practice generated sufficient income to support us comfortably. He framed it as concern for my health, but it was actually the beginning of isolating me from my professional identity and independent income. I initially resisted because I loved cardiac surgery and had worked my entire life to reach this level. But Eric was relentlessly persistent with pressure and guilt. He said if I truly loved him, I would prioritize our marriage over career. He said successful marriages required sacrifices, and since he earned more, it should be me reducing hours. This logic was manipulative, but after months of constant pressure, I agreed to go part-time. Going part-time meant I performed fewer surgeries and had less operating room time. My technical skills began declining from lack of practice. My income decreased significantly. My professional reputation suffered as colleagues questioned my commitment. Eric seemed pleased I was home more and less exhausted, but I felt diminished professionally and gradually realized that was exactly what Eric wanted. He wanted me smaller, less accomplished, less independent. Around our third anniversary, Eric insisted we consolidate all finances. He said married couples should operate as one financial unit with unified management. I had always maintained separate accounts and investment portfolios, but Eric said this showed lack of trust and commitment to our marriage. After months of guilt trips and emotional manipulation, I agreed to joint accounts that Eric primarily managed since he claimed superior financial knowledge. This was a catastrophic mistake. Once our finances were joint, Eric controlled everything. He monitored every expense I made. He gave me an allowance for personal spending while he spent freely. Meanwhile, he purchased luxury items, expensive golf equipment, entertained his medical school friends lavishly. When I objected to the obvious disparity, he said he earned more, so he deserved more spending freedom. He had successfully convinced me this was normal despite it clearly being financial control and abuse. Eric's medical school reunion friends became constant presences in our life. They visited Seattle frequently, always staying at our waterfront estate that Eric had purchased primarily in his name, despite my income contributing significantly. I was expected to entertain them, coordinating elaborate meals and activities while they reminisced about medical school. I was hostess and event planner, not an intellectual equal, despite being a cardiac surgeon. The verbal abuse intensified around year 5. Eric would belittle me in front of his physician friends, making jokes about my declining surgical skills and reduced schedule. He would mock my appearance, my intelligence, my career trajectory compared to his. His friends would laugh uncomfortably, but no one intervened or told Eric his behavior was inappropriate. I would stand there humiliated while Eric enjoyed the attention and dominance. Around year 6, Eric pressured me to quit surgery entirely. He said even part-time work made me unavailable for social obligations important to his career and family connections. He said I should focus exclusively on being his wife and supporting his success. I loved cardiac surgery desperately, but Eric's pressure was overwhelming. Eventually, I quit entirely, giving up my surgical practice and professional identity. This was Eric's ultimate goal. With no income and no professional identity, I was trapped. Eric controlled every dollar. I could not purchase anything without his approval. He used money to punish me when I displeased him, withholding funds even for necessities. I felt powerless with no ability to support myself if I left. Exactly the situation Eric had methodically engineered over years. Sexual demands became degrading and coercive. Eric expected me available whenever he wanted, regardless of my interest or consent. If I declined, he would become angry, withhold money and affection, threaten to find someone who appreciated him. I complied more often than I wanted because refusing created unbearable consequences and tension. This was clearly sexual coercion, but I did not recognize it as abuse then. Around year 7, Eric hit me during an argument. A hard slap across my face that left me stunned and my pride shattered. He apologized, immediately cried dramatically, blamed stress from a difficult surgical case, promised it would never happen again. I wanted desperately to believe him. I was 7 years into marriage, had no income, no career. after quitting surgery completely financially dependent. Leaving seemed impossibly complicated, so I stayed, and the physical violence happened 4 more times over following months. But something shifted after that first hit. I remembered who I had been before Eric: a cardiac surgeon, someone who made life and death decisions daily, someone who operated with precision on human hearts. I started treating my situation like a complex surgical case requiring careful planning and flawless execution. I began systematically documenting everything: photos of bruises with medical precision and timestamps, recordings of verbal abuse, detailed written journal of incidents with clinical objectivity. I also started examining our finances with surgical precision. What I discovered made me sick with rage. Eric had been systematically moving money into accounts I had no access to. He had fraudulently transferred our waterfront estate solely into his name by forging my signature on documents. He had run up massive credit card debt in my name without my knowledge or consent. He had been preparing to divorce me and leave me destitute while keeping everything. The financial manipulation totaled approximately $1.2 million stolen plus fraudulent property transfers worth millions more. Eric had been planning this for years, systematically stealing while controlling and degrading me. This was not just abuse. It was calculated financial predation by another physician who knew exactly what he was doing. I realized Eric had targeted me from the beginning. He had identified a successful surgeon with significant income and no family wealth in Seattle to protect me. He had isolated me from my surgical career and professional network. He had taken complete control of finances. He had systematically destroyed my self-esteem through constant criticism. His abuse was not loss of control, it was calculated predation to steal my money and destroy my independence. This realization made me coldly, surgically furious. I was a cardiac surgeon trained in meticulous planning and flawless execution under pressure. I approached my escape like planning a complex cardiac surgery. Every step carefully mapped, every contingency anticipated, every element timed for maximum effectiveness. I would operate on Eric's life with the same precision I once used on human hearts. I discreetly consulted with specialists, a divorce attorney, a criminal attorney, a forensic accountant. Together we built a comprehensive legal strategy: discovery of hidden assets, documentation of forgery and fraud, criminal complaints for domestic violence and financial crimes, restraining orders, emergency injunctions, property transfers, everything planned with surgical precision. For 16 months I worked on my case while pretending to be the submissive, broken wife Eric believed I had become. I gathered overwhelming evidence, filed strategic legal papers timed to hit simultaneously, like synchronized surgical incisions, transferred money back into accounts I controlled, built relationships with Eric's physician friends who might testify, prepared for battle while Eric partied and abused me, completely oblivious to what was coming. Eric announced he was hosting a major reunion celebration at our waterfront estate, his medical school class 20-year reunion. He expected me to coordinate everything as usual. I agreed sweetly, which should have made him suspicious, given how much I normally dreaded these events. But Eric's arrogance prevented him questioning my compliance. This reunion was going to be the perfect surgical theater for my final devastating operation. The reunion celebration was 5 nights ago at our waterfront estate overlooking Elliott Bay. Eric had invited 30 of his medical school classmates and their spouses. It was an elegant evening event with catered gourmet food, premium wine and cocktails, and live jazz music. I spent the day before executing final legal maneuvers with surgical precision. Papers filed with King County Superior Court that morning. Bank accounts secured by afternoon. Property transfers completed. Criminal complaints submitted. Everything ready to detonate simultaneously. I arrived at the party wearing a long designer cashmere coat despite the mild Seattle evening. Eric commented, I looked ridiculous, overdressed, and weird. His physician friends chuckled at his comment. They were drinking expensive wine and reminiscing about medical school, celebrating their successful careers. They barely acknowledged me, except to request drinks or appetizers. I was invisible staff, not the cardiac surgeon I had once been. The evening progressed with toasts and stories. Eric gave a long speech about their medical school days and professional successes, not mentioning me once despite my surgical income having funded much of our lifestyle. His friends applauded and cheered loudly. Everyone was drinking heavily and in excellent spirits. Eric was euphoric, basking in admiration from people whose opinions he valued most. Around 10 p.m., Eric made a shocking announcement. He said since everyone had worked so hard to become successful physicians, he wanted to provide special entertainment. He called me to the center of our living room overlooking the waterfront. His physician friends turned to look at me with curiosity and some with discomfort. Eric announced his wife was going to strip for everyone as entertainment and celebration of their reunion. Several physicians looked shocked and uncomfortable. A few grinned with anticipation. Most looked confused about whether this was appropriate or serious. I stood in the center of my own living room in my long coat, knowing this was the perfect surgical moment I had planned for 16 months. Eric watched me expecting fear, compliance, or tears. He was about to experience something entirely different and devastating. I slowly began unbuttoning my cashmere coat with deliberate precision. Eric smiled, actually believing I would comply with his degrading demand. His physician friends watched with expressions ranging from anticipation to disgust to confusion. I removed the coat carefully and deliberately. Underneath, I wore an elegant navy suit. But I also wore a leather document portfolio strapped across my body, containing thick stacks of legal documents. I pulled them out and held them high for everyone to see. Eric's smile vanished instantly. Confusion replaced it rapidly, then anger, then visible fear. His physician friends murmured among themselves, trying to understand what was unfolding. I began speaking clearly and loudly, using my trained surgical voice that commanded respect and attention in operating rooms. I announced I would not be stripping tonight or ever for Eric's entertainment. Instead, I wanted to share legal documents with everyone present, all physicians who would appreciate proper documentation and evidence. Eric yelled at me to stop making a scene and embarrassing him. I ignored him completely. Several physician friends told Eric to let me speak their medical training, making them curious about legitimate documentation. The first document was divorce papers filed that morning with King County Superior Court. I was divorcing Eric for financial abuse, fraud, theft, forgery, and domestic violence. Eric's face went from angry red to shocked white rapidly. His physician friends looked at each other surprised. As medical professionals, they understood the seriousness of filed legal papers with specific allegations. The second document was a comprehensive forensic accounting report. It detailed exactly how Eric had stolen $1.2 million from our joint accounts over 7 years by systematically transferring money to hidden accounts, how he had forged my signature on property documents to fraudulently transfer our waterfront estate solely into his name, how he had run up massive credit card debt using my identity without my knowledge or consent. I explained this calmly with clinical precision while Eric stood frozen. The third document was a court order issued that afternoon. It transferred our waterfront estate back into joint ownership based on conclusive evidence of forgery and fraud. The property Eric thought he solely owned was now jointly ours and court-supervised pending divorce proceedings. His physician friends were now paying very close attention, reading documents over each other's shoulders with medical precision. The fourth document was an emergency court order freezing all bank and investment accounts pending investigation of systematic financial fraud. Eric could not access our money without explicit court approval. Every dollar was frozen solid. I had already withdrawn my legal share into accounts only I controlled with surgical precision. Eric was effectively without liquid assets until the court ruled on final asset division. The fifth document was a restraining order granted that afternoon by the judge. Eric was required to immediately vacate our marital home and stay at least 1,000 feet away from me at all times. If he did not leave within 2 hours, he would be arrested for violating a court order. Several physicians gasped audibly at this. Eric looked like he might vomit or pass out. His face was completely white. The sixth document was a detailed criminal complaint filed with Seattle Police Department and King County prosecutor. Eric was being investigated for forgery, fraud, identity theft, and felony domestic violence. I had provided extensive evidence, including medical photographs of injuries with timestamps, recordings of verbal abuse, and forensic financial documentation. These were serious felony charges, potentially resulting in years of prison time and medical license revocation. I walked around the room, handing each physician a copy of a detailed memorandum I had prepared with medical precision. It outlined 10 years of Eric's systematic abuse and financial manipulation, the isolation from my surgical career, the complete financial control, the constant degradation and criticism, the sexual coercion, the physical violence with medical documentation. Everything documented with dates, specific incidents, and supporting evidence presented with clinical objectivity. Then I played audio recordings on my phone. Conversations where Eric bragged to friends about controlling me and systematically stealing my money. Where he discussed his ongoing affairs with other women during our marriage. Where he mocked his physician friends as useful idiots he manipulated for social advancement. The room was completely silent except for Eric's recorded voice revealing his true calculating character. After the recordings finished, no one moved or spoke for several long seconds. Eric sat with his head in his hands, looking devastated. Several physicians were shaking their heads with visible disgust. One physician friend named Dr. Richard Chen, who I knew was chief of medical staff at his hospital, spoke up seriously. He said as a physician, he had reviewed my documents and they appeared medically and legally proper with thorough evidence. That Eric needed to leave immediately before making his legal situation infinitely worse by violating the restraining order. Another physician friend named Dr. Sarah Morrison addressed Eric directly with cold precision. She said she had suspected Eric was abusive, but had not known the horrifying extent. That she had considered him a friend, but now realized he was a predator who had systematically destroyed another surgeon's career and life. That as a physician herself she was disgusted by his criminal behavior. That she would fully cooperate with any investigation and testify against him if needed without hesitation. I announced everyone had 30 minutes to leave my property. That the reunion party was over and Eric was banned from the property by court order. That anyone who wished to support him could leave with him immediately, but I would not tolerate anyone defending systematic abuse and theft. Most of the physicians began gathering belongings immediately, many avoiding eye contact with Eric completely. Several stopped to apologize to me for not recognizing or intervening in his obvious abuse earlier. Eric finally found his voice and began yelling desperately. That I was lying about everything, that I had fabricated all evidence, that I would regret destroying him publicly like this. Dr. Chen cut him off immediately and firmly. He said Eric needed to understand he was now facing potential medical license revocation in addition to serious criminal charges. That the Washington Medical Commission would be notified about felony charges. That anything Eric said tonight could and would be used against him in both criminal and licensing proceedings. That Eric needed to retain excellent criminal defense counsel immediately. Several physician friends who had been close to Eric began backing away from him literally and figuratively. His professional relationships and social circle were crumbling in real time as they recognized his true character and the serious legal jeopardy he had created. His entire identity, built on professional reputation and peer respect among physicians, was disintegrating before his eyes, while 30 witnesses watched. I called private security I had hired specifically for the evening. 2 professional guards appeared promptly and I showed them the restraining order and explained Eric needed to vacate the premises immediately. The guards professionally but very firmly told Eric he had exactly 10 minutes to leave or they would call police to arrest him for violating a court order. Eric looked at me with pure hatred mixed with disbelief and terror. He grabbed his jacket and left with guards escorting him to ensure compliance with the court order. After everyone left, I stood alone in my waterfront estate, my home that was now legally protected as mine through court order. I felt overwhelming relief wash over me like completing a successful complex surgery. 10 years of systematic abuse and total control were over. I had used every bit of my surgical training in planning precision and execution to document crimes, build an ironclad case, and systematically dismantle Eric's power over me with flawless technique. I had won the most important case of my life. The following months brought intense legal proceedings, but ultimate comprehensive vindication. Eric hired extremely expensive criminal and divorce attorneys using family money, but the evidence against him was overwhelming and medically documented. His attorneys advised him to settle the divorce very favorably and plead guilty to significantly reduced criminal charges to avoid trial on all counts, including felony domestic violence and medical license implications. My divorce attorney was exceptional, one of the absolute best family law practitioners in Seattle, with extensive experience in high-asset divorces. She secured an incredibly favorable divorce settlement. I received the waterfront estate outright, 4 investment properties. We owned half of all joint accounts and investment portfolios, and a massive cash payment compensating for systematically stolen funds and abuse damages. The total value exceeded $4.8 million. Eric was left with minimal assets, crushing legal bills, and a felony criminal record. The forensic accountant I hired recovered most of the $1.2 million Eric had stolen systematically. Some had been spent wastefully on his lifestyle, but I recovered $980,000 plus substantial interest and penalties. Combined with property and investments from the settlement, I was in significantly stronger financial position than before I married Eric. Better off financially because I now owned valuable Seattle real estate outright. Several of Eric's physician friends reached out privately to apologize sincerely. They said they should have spoken up definitively when they witnessed his obviously abusive behavior over years. They expressed deep respect for how I had methodically built my case with documentation and strategic legal filings with surgical precision. Chen told me he would be filing a formal complaint with the Washington Medical Commission about Eric's conduct regardless of criminal outcomes. Dr. Morrison actually became a genuine friend and ally. She helped me restart my surgical career by referring patients and introducing me to cardiac surgeons she respected throughout Seattle. She said watching me build and execute that case with such precision reminded her why she became a physician, to use medical knowledge and skills to save lives and achieve justice. Her support was meaningful and helped me rebuild professional networks I had lost. I learned through mutual medical connections what happened to Eric after that night. Multiple former patients filed complaints alleging he had performed unnecessary orthopedic surgeries to generate fees. The medical commission investigated and found evidence of unethical practices. His hospital privileges were suspended pending investigation. His professional reputation was completely destroyed throughout Seattle's medical community. He faced additional investigations beyond what I had filed. The criminal charges resulted in negotiated plea agreements. Eric pled guilty to felony fraud and forgery to avoid trial on all charges, including domestic violence. He received 2 years in prison, massive fines and restitution payments, and a permanent felony record. The medical commission revoked his license permanently based on felony convictions. He would never practice medicine again anywhere. His career was finished permanently. I used my divorce settlement to completely rebuild my life with precision. I returned to cardiac surgery, initially doing locum tenens work at multiple hospitals while reestablishing my surgical skills and professional reputation. Within 1 year, I had sufficient case volume and reputation to join an excellent cardiac surgery practice as a full partner. Being back in the operating room was profoundly healing and restorative. I also engaged in intensive trauma therapy to process 10 years of systematic abuse. The therapist helped me understand Eric's behavior was textbook coercive control and financial exploitation by an abuser who was also a physician. That he had systematically isolated, controlled, and degraded me using medicine as a weapon. That my response, spending 16 months building an ironclad legal case with precision, demonstrated exceptional strength and professional skill. That I should be immensely proud of protecting myself using my surgical training and planning abilities. The therapist also helped me recognize warning signs I had missed when I first met Eric. the rapid relationship escalation and public proposal creating pressure, the gradual systematic isolation from career and professional identity, the financial control presented as helpful married management, the constant criticism disguised as concerned feedback about my well-being. These were classic methodical abuse tactics I had not recognized because I was experiencing them. 3 years after that night, I was thriving comprehensively. My cardiac surgery practice was flourishing with an excellent reputation and full surgical schedule. I had been appointed to the cardiothoracic surgery faculty at University of Washington School of Medicine, teaching residents and fellows. I had complete financial independence with substantial assets generating passive income. I had genuine professional and personal friendships with colleagues who respected me. I was happy in ways I had forgotten were possible. I heard that Eric was in prison and facing additional civil lawsuits from former patients he had defrauded with unnecessary surgeries. That his family had distanced themselves significantly after the full extent of his criminal conduct became publicly known. That he would emerge from prison as a convicted felon with permanently revoked medical license and destroyed reputation. His life remained permanently diminished by consequences of his own criminal choices. I began dating again very cautiously with much sharper judgment about character and red flags honed by experience. I met someone named Dr. James Liu, a thoracic surgeon at a different hospital, through professional medical conferences. James was kind, respectful, intellectually engaging, and emotionally mature with no red flags. We collaborated on complex surgical cases, and I carefully observed how he treated everyone with genuine respect regardless of their role. We dated slowly for over 18 months, building trust carefully and deliberately. James knew my entire history before we became serious. I told him everything about Eric and the systematic abuse with complete honesty. James's response was perfect. He said Eric had been a fool to abuse someone as brilliant and accomplished as me. That using planning and legal knowledge to protect yourself from a criminal predator was not manipulation, it was exactly what any intelligent person should do. That he admired how I had used my surgical precision to document everything and escape safely. 4 years after leaving Eric, James and I got engaged. Our relationship was completely different from my marriage to Eric in every possible way. James and I were genuine equals and intellectual partners who respected each other completely. We kept finances completely separate by mutual agreement, both understanding the critical importance of independence. We made all decisions collaboratively as partners. James celebrated my surgical success enthusiastically. This was what a healthy partnership between equals actually looked like in practice. We married in a small ceremony at a friend's estate, just 80 close friends and family attending. My parents were there, relieved I had escaped Eric, and found someone genuinely worthy. Dr. Chen and Dr. Morrison attended, having become real friends after speaking up that night decisively. They told James he was extraordinarily lucky to have found someone as brilliant and courageous as me. The wedding was intimate and joyful, exactly what I wanted. My cardiac surgery career continued flourishing beyond expectations. I was performing complex cases other surgeons referred to me. I had published research in major cardiac surgery journals. I mentored women surgical residents, emphasizing the critical importance of maintaining professional identity and financial independence, regardless of relationship status. Every mentee felt meaningful because I understood intimately the dangers of losing professional identity. 6 years after that night, when I removed my cashmere coat and revealed the legal documents with surgical precision, I reflected on my complete life transformation. I had gone from a woman trapped in an abusive marriage, professionally diminished and financially exploited by another physician, to a highly successful cardiac surgeon, with a thriving practice helping patients, a healthy marriage to James, built on equality and mutual respect, and substantial financial security. The moment Eric ordered me to strip for his physician friends was intended as my ultimate humiliation and demonstration of his total control over me. But it became his complete downfall and my liberation. His arrogance in believing a trained cardiac surgeon was too broken to plan systematically against him was his fatal miscalculation. His attempt at degradation became the operating theater where I performed my most important surgery, cutting him completely out of my life with precision. I kept photos from that night taken by Dr. Morrison, who recognized medical and legal history unfolding in real time. One showed me standing in my living room holding up legal documents, while 30 physicians stared in shock and horror. Eric was visible in the background, looking absolutely devastated and pale. I kept that photo in my office as a reminder that abusers eventually face comprehensive consequences when victims use their professional skills and knowledge to fight back with precision. My message to women in abusive relationships, especially professional women with advanced training, was always consistent and clear. Your skills and knowledge are weapons your abuser cannot take away unless you surrender them. If you are a surgeon, use surgical precision planning. If you are an attorney, use legal knowledge. If you are a scientist, engineer, or any professional, use your training to build your systematic escape plan. You are not weak. You are gathering strength methodically. I also spoke extensively about how professional medical communities enable abuse through collective silence and inaction. Eric's physician friends had watched him systematically degrade me for years at parties and social events. Most said nothing, not wanting to interfere or create social awkwardness. Their silence enabled escalation of abuse. If you witness a colleague treating a partner abusively, speak up decisively. Professional ethics require intervention when you witness harm being inflicted. My cardiac surgery practice became known for mentoring women surgeons and supporting work-life balance. I wanted to ensure no woman surgeon felt pressured to abandon her career for a relationship. I counseled residents about maintaining financial independence and recognizing abuse patterns. Several told me privately they had left abusive situations after our conversations using strategies I had described. James and I discussed having children seriously. I was hesitant because of trauma from my marriage to Eric, but extensive therapy and time had healed much of that deep pain. James was patient and supportive, saying we would decide together when I felt completely ready without any pressure. His respect for my agency and timeline was just one more way our relationship was built on equality rather than control. I occasionally wondered about Eric in prison. I knew through medical networks his medical license revocation was permanent and irreversible, that his felony criminal record would follow him forever, preventing many opportunities, that he would emerge from prison unable to practice medicine, the only career and identity he knew, that his life remained permanently diminished by his own criminal choices. I felt no sympathy whatsoever. Justice had been served appropriately. 8 years after that night, I was invited to speak at a national conference on physician wellness and abuse prevention. I shared my story about being systematically abused by another physician and using surgical precision to document abuse and build a comprehensive legal case for escape. The response from physicians in the audience was powerful and emotional. Dozens approached me afterwards saying they or colleagues were in similar situations. Several thanked me for speaking openly about how even highly trained professionals get trapped systematically. I also began teaching continuing medical education courses about recognizing and intervening in colleague abuse situations. I trained physicians on coercive control, financial abuse, and professional responsibility to intervene. I emphasized that abuse survivors often make the best advocates because they understand the dynamics intimately from experience. Many physician abuse survivors went into advocacy specifically to help others using their medical knowledge. My life now was rich, meaningful, and secure in absolutely every dimension. Successful cardiac surgery. Career performing life-saving operations daily. Healthy, equal marriage to James built on mutual respect and intellectual partnership. Financial independence with valuable real estate assets and investments. Professional reputation as a top cardiac surgeon in Seattle. Everything Eric tried to destroy systematically, I had rebuilt comprehensively and better. Everything he tried to take from me through manipulation, I had reclaimed and expanded substantially. His 10 years of systematic abuse had ultimately failed completely and catastrophically for him. His attempt at ultimate public humiliation became his own total downfall, witnessed by 30 physician colleagues. His arrogance that a trained cardiac surgeon was too broken to plan systematically was his fatal strategic error. The moment he demanded I strip for his medical school friends, he believed he was asserting ultimate dominance and control. He had absolutely no idea I had spent 16 months systematically building an airtight legal case with surgical precision, that I had documented every crime with medical thoroughness, gathered overwhelming evidence, filed strategic papers timed for maximum simultaneous impact, and waited patiently for the perfect public moment to present my case. His arrogance was his complete destruction. 9 years after leaving Eric, I stood before the American Association for Thoracic Surgery, receiving a major award for surgical excellence and mentorship. As I accepted, I thought about standing in my living room, removing my coat with deliberate precision, revealing the documents that destroyed my abuser's career, freedom, and identity, while his colleagues watched in horror. In my acceptance speech, I said, "Abuse survivors are not broken people requiring rescue. They are strong people systematically trapped by calculating predators who destroy confidence and remove options methodically. The moment they decide to escape is extraordinary courage. Planning escape methodically and using every professional skill they possess is survival and self-defense, not manipulation. Professional women with advanced training have unique advantages in building systematic cases against abusers. We should use those advantages without guilt or hesitation." I said if anyone listening was in an abusive situation currently, they should know certain truths. It is absolutely not your fault. You are not weak or foolish. Your abuser targeted you precisely because you are strong, capable, and successful. Professional help exists. Escape is possible with planning. Document everything with professional precision. Use your training to build your case systematically. And when you are ready, strike decisively with overwhelming force. You owe your abuser nothing. You owe yourself everything. The audience of cardiac surgeons gave me a standing ovation lasting several emotional minutes. Many were crying openly. Afterward, dozens approached me privately, some saying they were going to leave their own abusive situations using systematic strategies. I described others thanking me for validating their experiences and giving them hope and practical tools for escape. Have you ever seen someone try to humiliate another person publicly and have it backfire completely? How would you have responded if someone ordered you to degrade yourself for entertainment? What advice would you give professional women with advanced training who are trapped in abusive relationships? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story opened your eyes about abuse dynamics or inspired you with hope, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more true stories about overcoming adversity and using your professional skills to reclaim power and freedom. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they are stronger than they know, that professional knowledge and training are powerful weapons their abuser cannot take away, and that systematic planning and decisive action can defeat even the most calculating and controlling abuser. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my story today. I sincerely hope it reminds you that you deserve respect and dignity always, that your professional skills and training are tools for self-defense and liberation, and that abusers always eventually face comprehensive consequences when their victims find the courage, resources, and strategy to fight back with everything they have. Take excellent care of yourself and know that professional help and justice are absolutely possible.